Hello, it's Dawn Michelle, and today I have company. Joining me is my amazingly talented friend Candy from Candy Soul and Soil, and she's going to chat with us about tarot, art, and journaling. So, hello, Candy. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh my gosh, it is just so lovely to be on here. So thank you so much for inviting me on. Although it is a big ask to be asked to come onto your channel to talk to you about journaling. It's a lot of pressure. And you're going to have to excuse me if I look like I'm melting. We're about to have a big storm here. So literally I am melting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully it stays at bay for you, at least until
Yeah.
then. For anybody who I don't know who wouldn't know your channel, because we all talk about how wonderful Candy's channel is, but do you want to tell us
Oh.
a little bit about your channel and what you like to do there?
Yeah, well, if you look at my channel and go back to my very first video, though, don't do that. It says I've
Don't
been
do
on
that
about
for
eight.
mine either.
It says I've been on about 8 or 9 years, but I haven't really. I feel I've just hit like 3 years, really.
Mhm.
The first few videos, I started downloading garden videos, and I didn't even know at the time that YouTube had an audience. I thought it was just a video holding app. That's how out of touch I was. So the first few videos were garden stuff. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what prompted me initially to start the channel. I wanted a garden diary. I was watching homesteading and gardening channels, art channels as well. Then I suddenly thought, my gosh, I could put a little bit of art on. Then I realized that people could actually watch, which was a revelation.
Yeah.
And then I discovered tarot tube. So I think about 9 or 10 videos in, after doing garden videos, I did just a flip through of my second tarot deck, which was the Muse tarot. And
Mhm.
I, at the time, didn't have a clue about like meanings, or I was so new. But I saw all these lovely flip throughs. I'd found Kelly at the Truth in Story, and it was just this whole world. And I thought, oh, I could do a flip through.
Yeah.
Didn't cross my mind that perhaps I might need to know anything. I was just wanted to show the pretty
Yeah.
cards. So, and it's just grown from there. Now it's a bit of everything. It's art, it's tarot, it's the garden, it's going outside with tarot decks, adventure tarot. So it's all sorts.
It's just kind of your creative journey. It seems.
Yeah, I'm trying to find some sort of umbrella for it all, so it doesn't feel like separate bits of me being
Mhm.
shared, because it is all the same thing. I think
Yeah.
it's just this like creative energy of life, but it just shows up in distinct areas. So
Mhm.
that's the
I think
umbrella of it, creative living.
it definitely seems like you, like all different aspects of you, which is what makes it so amazing. Your videos, and on the whole, are creative works of art. Just so you
Oh,
know.
thank you so much. Gosh, coming from you, that's just so immensely lovely to hear. So thank you.
Oh,
It surprised me actually when I started putting together the videos. I remember the video that I realised I did a reading. I think it was a deck interview reading with the Witch's Wisdom tarot,
mhm.
and I had filmed that day walking the dogs, and I picked up like falling leaves, and I kind of did it with like editing in like the falling leaves and put music on it for the first time. And the process of editing the video together, it felt like being in my art studio, and I absolutely loved it. And that was an aha moment for me, that YouTube for me feels like an extension of the art practice. So I mean, I have no kit. I've got an old iPhone, and I
Mhm.
just use like iMovie, but it's just so fun to play around with it all, and I love it.
I see, like, video creating is for me, and I think for you too, it's just another form of art.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it totally is.
I mean, sometimes
Yeah,
editing's frustrating and it's tedious and all that, but it's also
yeah,
really fun. I really enjoy when I get the opportunity to, like, do creative stuff in within the editing, like,
yes.
scope of my video. That's always so fun. Just it takes forever, but it's always so fun to do.
It takes so long, doesn't it,
It
to
does.
do?
Yeah.
Like we've been doing these garden arcana videos, which is more vlog style, which I've really loved. And that's been a really good way to bring all those separate bits of my life
Mhm.
together, doing it more like a vlog style. And I'm down to only being able to get one video done a week at the minute, that way, doing it that way. It takes that long. but I love it. And
Yeah.
I love the way that you dress your videos. You're
Yeah.
so good at that. I find that really, really difficult to do, and you're so good at it. So all of that's like art as well. It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mm.
that's but the funny thing is and I was just having a conversation with Lisa about it in a series we're doing, and that's just decorating my table. It looks like that even when no one's looking is the thing.
See, that's probably why you're so good at it, because it's so natural to
Yeah,
you that,
it just kind of it is, and we were talking about how like you know, the aesthetic part of things, like that's just my life. That's my creative expression. So it
yeah,
happens even when nobody's looking because it happens for me. Like it
yeah.
makes me happy. So that's why I do it.
Yeah. See, I am constantly creating when nobody's looking. I love that phrase, like, who are you when nobody's looking?
Yeah.
But like my desk will have like dirty socks and plates on. There's no dressing going on, but
Yeah.
there's creativity going on all the time. But I tend to create and it just piles up in humongous messes.
Mhm.
So I don't do the dressing very well.
That's a sort of an energy all in itself, right? It's that messy, creative, like being in the moment. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of an aesthetic in itself. Like I
Like paint up my arm at the minute
yeah,
from
paint up your
painting, yeah.
arm and, you know, the other day I was making a video and I realized like I had ink all over my fingers because I had been like inking stuff and stamping and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, well, this is my life. My hands are
Yeah.
often covered. So how did you actually find your way to working with the tarot though? Like actually using
Um,
cards and incorporating them into practice?
it
I'm always
was
curious in people's origin story.
it was just a random comment from a friend one day. I was talking to a friend, and she'd got some oracle decks, and I'd never had anything to do with tarot or oracle or ever thought about it. And she just said one day, like, I'd got some cut stones that I'd collected around and different things and an incense stick going, and she looked at the little setup and she said, I can't believe that you don't do tarot or you haven't got an oracle deck. And I was like, really? Oh, me, a tarot deck, an oracle deck? And I just thought, well, I never crossed my mind to ever look at it, or I would just never cross paths at all. So I'd mentioned it to another friend, and she said, yeah, you should. And I ordered, oh my gosh, what, I haven't got it anymore. It's the only deck I gave away. I gave away my first deck, and I want it back now. Work Your Light, the Work Your Light oracle.
Mhm.
And it's got the most beautiful Mother Mary card in that deck, and
It
I
does,
do
yeah.
miss that one card. So I bought that and loved it. And then another friend phoned, and I said, oh, look what I bought. I've just bought an oracle deck. And she just bought a tarot deck. She'd bought the Kim Cran's one.
Mhm.
Why have I forgot the name of it?
Wild
What,
Unknown.
the Wild Unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah, she bought that one, and she just got it out on FaceTime on the phone and was showing me some cards, and we did like a intuitive mini reading, and both ended up blown away. And I ordered that. That was my first tarot deck. So I'd got the two decks then, an oracle and a tarot, and that was it. That was totally it. I was hooked, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
But I never felt new to it. It never felt new. It literally just felt like my art practice, because I'd always connected story through visuals, through shapes, through lines, especially that Kim Cran's deck. It was so like a lot of my artwork, with
Mhm.
like lines and the occasional splash of colour bringing some meaning in. And it didn't feel new. And that sounds really egotistical, but it's not. It just felt like what I'd always done
Mhm.
with art materials in front of me.
Well,
Like,
it is. I mean, it is art if you
yeah, and like in viewing like symbols and lines and color with meaning.
Mhm.
And when I first started reading and going to the guidebook to see what the meanings were, my intuitive hits were matching the guidebook. So
Oh,
I
awesome.
could tell that it was the same ballpark. So I never felt
Mhm.
new to it, but I love it. I love
Just
it so
familiar.
much. Yeah, so
Yeah,
familiar.
yeah. That's awesome.
Mm.
And then so has journaling, doing tarot journaling. We'll talk a little bit about art journaling too, because you have
Yeah.
amazing art journals. Like they're
Oh,
just so
thank you.
fantastic. But so has incorporating journaling into your tarot practice, has that always been a part of it for you?
Yeah, I think for me the journaling it slows down the message for me so that I can let the story emerge to its fullest.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I just put the cards down, I can look at them and I can go bam, 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 that's the meaning. But I think a lot of the nuances and like the synchronicities and a lot of the hidden magic of a reading, it needs time to reveal itself, and slowing the story that comes out at you from the cards down. Journaling is just so brilliant for that. I think that's why I like borders as well on cards, because
Yeah.
for me the border kind of stops it all from like just leaping at me too
Contains it.
fast.
Yeah.
So I love it for that. It's been really important, I think, just to slow the hits down of what the message is. So that's the
Mhm.
key thing for me with journaling. I mean, I don't know if you find that as well.
I do. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that it also, and I think I might have mentioned this in a video, but one of the reasons I started journaling with in an artistic sense, the way that I do, is because when I started tarot, I didn't have the space. I didn't have space. I was doing
yeah,
pulling cards like wherever and whenever I was, and there was usually little kids running around, and
yeah,
half the softball team and whatever. And I couldn't leave my cards out, and I wanted to be able to keep coming back to those readings, and I didn't want to have to keep pulling everything out and trying to reset that reading. So that's when I started kind of
yeah,
almost making the reading in paper in my journal, so then I could just
yeah,
open it up and there was my reading and I could continue to work with it, because I
yeah.
needed that time and that space, but I didn't literally have the physical space to just leave cards laying around without, them, I don't know, getting chewed up by a dog or colored on by a toddler.
I love that. I love that. It's almost like you've turned your journal into a tarot table.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think journaling can do that. It can also become an altar, I think,
Mhm.
because it can put ritual into a tarot reading, just
Oh,
like
for
the
sure.
process of opening the journal. Like I light a candle, I
Mhm,
normally light an incense stick if I'm sitting down to journal, and
mhm.
it's just that pattern, that repetitive pattern. I'll date it, I'll write down what deck I'm using, and then like I'll write down the cards that I've pulled, and
Mhm.
it's the repetitive steps into almost like a ritual. You've
Yeah.
set up a ritual practice, so it's a tarot table, it's an altar space
Mhm.
as well once you've opened a book to do that, but it's portable, and like you
Yeah.
say, you can close it and put it back on the shelf, can't you? So
Mhm.
it's been that for me too. It's that ritual space. I
Mhm.
think it can create so many different spaces. I mean, it's like an expansion space.
Mhm.
So it gives you chance to sit down and take that initial story that comes out at you and expand it.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then it shines the lights into all the nooks and crannies and all those connections and coincidences, which I
Mhm.
think is where the magic of the message can lie.
Yeah.
And like not only like connections with the cards, but like connections with something that might have happened a month ago, or
Mhm.
something that you heard on the radio, and you can see it, and you've got a space to expand that table, that tarot table. It becomes like a whole world then, but you've got room in that journal to
Mhm.
do it. And like when you think about it, like all magic starts with a thought, doesn't it? Any
Yeah.
magic, it starts with a thought. So if you've got that initial thought of what your cards are
Mhm.
giving you, but you've got that limitless space of a journal to
Mhm.
go on a journey with them, then it just puts magic into it. It almost makes the tarot table an entire world to step into and explore, I think. So
Yeah.
it's just space, it's magic space.
Space, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Do you do journaling that's I mean, I know you do a lot of art journaling, which is beautiful. Do you do journaling that's just no art, just writing and
Yeah, to be honest, most of my tarot journaling is in notebooks, and a lot of it is, you know, just writing.
Yeah.
My actual tarot journal, it was a broken notebook that I didn't want to throw away, and I've been using this for a couple of years, and I mean, literally it's just this. So you have all of those beautiful journals. I love the way you do it with the printouts of the pictures. I used to do that. I've got some earlier journals here, but it was costing me too much with the printer cartridges. And I just thought, I do go back and look at my old journals sometimes those connections and those synchronicities do send me back, which is another thing I think tarot journaling is brilliant for. It's a record, isn't it? And that becomes a magic tool. You literally made a fantastic like tool to use. So I do sometimes go back, but I find that like printing out all of those pictures, it was just too much. And as long as I had some way of recording what the cards were, what the deck was, if I need to, I can replicate it on the table in front of me and see the deck, just pull it out. But yeah, a lot of the journaling is just very, very simple, just notebook scribbles, and then it can become doodling. And if I want to remember something, I then have to turn it into imagery. For me, that's the biggest plus point of journaling with tarot. It's memory, because I'm visual. My memory is really visual. It's only visual.
Yeah.
So if I've written it, I won't remember it. Or if you've said it to me, I won't remember it. Or if I heard it, I won't remember it. If I've seen it in picture form, I remember it. So if it's something that really has like made me go, oh, okay, that's when you might see me like going somewhere else and starting to draw it, or like doing a quick doodle sketch to remember it. Like, and not the sort of drawing where you have to be able to draw to do it. Just anything, just to put down something visual. So
yeah, that's so cool. The printing the little card thing off, I love the look of it, but yeah, it gets really expensive. So I've started where I only do it in what I pretty much just call like my sacred readings journal. So I only do it for the things that are almost like you were saying, kind of tied into ritual for me. Or something that I want to maybe definitely go back to later on and look at and continue to work with. Because I find that a lot of times when I go back and read what I've written and look at the spreads and stuff, I'll gain like new insights, new perspectives.
yeah,
That sometimes
definitely.
that time is really valuable to I think get a better look at it. But yeah, it does to do that to that level does get expensive in terms of paper and ink and all that. I did purchase a little Canon Ivy, so I could just for my monthly medicine readings, so I can take a picture of those and put them into my other journal. But like even that like adds up in cost. So like,
yeah, I found that once I started, I wanted to photograph because I was just photographing my iPhone, putting it into Word, and then printing it off, like reducing it down in size, and then say printing off a whole week's worth of readings, and then going back and gluing them all in. But even that got too much, and I didn't ever want to miss a reading once I started doing it. And I loved it, and I love the look of those journals. I mean, you can see it's all battered now. It's been in and out of like the store cupboard, but this is just made with Amazon envelopes and like lots of scrap paper, and then just decorated with like loads of like scrap and stuff, just like stuff that I collect. I'm terrible for never wanting to throw anything out. And then like each month I did a moon painting, and then I photographed that and used that to print and decorate the pages for the month.
That's so
and like it like totally scrap paper, but you can see I absolutely loved printing out all of the readings. Like I was printing out everything, like putting mini books in, and it was just so much fun. This is going back right to when I first started on YouTube, because there's like gratitude practices and stuff that I did with Jen and stuff. So I mean, I saved expense with like using envelopes and like using scrap paper and like printing off my own artwork. So that was the sturgeon moon painting here. And
Beautiful.
you can see like I've replicated it, but you can see how much I was printing off. I was printing off so much, but I mean, it's a magic practice in its own right. So it's not just, you know, you get hits. For me, I think once you get a hit with a message and a story with the tarot reading, but then if you go on and do something like this with it, the art then takes over as the portal for messages. And the message carries on, because a lot of these things, it started with the cards, the message continued and evolved in the journaling, then building the art journal itself, it evolves the message again. It's like a continuum, which is why what I meant when I said, you know, I never felt new to tarot. It just felt like a extension of finding the story
of what you were already doing.
So it's not just a recording tool. It's then a doorway to let the voice of the reading expand, that space we were talking about, but also then to let other voices come in, like deity, ancestor voices. But a whole journal, which is my dad's voice coming through. It came through the Rider-Waite deck, which I now dedicated just to using for his voice. I've never gone to it and like demanded, like, come and speak to me, Dad. I always wait till I hear something or something's happened and I think, oh, I need to go and get my deck. This was made, this is a upcycled book. So you can see every turn my budget is quite low. So I'm not buying fancy, expensive leather-bound books. Not because I don't love them, I just can't afford them. But to use like upcycled books, it puts its own special magic in as well. So I think, you know, it's not reliant on budget, I don't think, using like sort of magic journaling practice. But this was an upcycled book. It was originally going to be for tarot study. Like I'd got the other journal that I've just shown you, which was for readings, but I wanted a separate tarot journal to put study in. But the book and the deck had a completely different idea, and started working in it. My dad's voice came through, and I was getting repeating cards, and the message was incredibly clear. So this became like, it took it on another journey. It's that expansion space that I was talking about earlier. Like, you do the reading, but you can expand it out, because those voices that you get through the decks and the cards, you get them when you're creating as well. It's just doorways being opened, I find, when you sit down to journal. I mean, anybody who's done any sort of journaling, whether it be art journaling or like just pen to paper on the back of an envelope, things come into your mind when you're doing it. It's like, it is definitely doorways being opened. I mean, you see here, I started putting like photocopies of my hand, because me and Dad, we both got club thumbs, and we would leave like thumbprints and everything. It was like a standing joke. We're the only two people in the whole family who had them. And so there's like, I've done a lot of artwork with hands and thumbprints and fingerprints because of that connection. And like the readings I was doing I was just copying, photographing them and putting them in here, and then like doing sort of weavings with some of the messages. This is just cardboard glued in. But you can see like the 5 of Cups was coming up in virtually every reading I did, or at some point I was saying, right, show me, it's you, and I would pull a card and it would be the 5 of Cups. And like the Queen of Swords and the 2 of Swords and the Queen of Swords came out a lot as well, because that's the card for my mom. And it was just, it just was, it was magical. It's like experiencing magic is the only way I can say it. But with doing the journaling and then turning it into pictures and taking those voices on a journey across the pages, you can see how the message like evolves and like finds a way to come out. So those were just pages at the start of this. That was going to be my study journal, and just turned into something totally different because those voices in the cards just had a completely different direction to take me, and it blew my socks off. And but it was giving it that expansion space to expand. And then the same thing has happened with the deck and walk. This is also the
yes,
journal that we've been doing, the deck and walk and pulling cards around the Decans. And I've been collaging like some of my readings during the deck and walk, and it's just been profound. I've done 1 or 2 collages every deck, and apart from the last couple of Decans, I got a bit behind. But I mean, this is part study and part sort of art portal, opening doors, and part tarot. It's all kind of combined again here. So this is a little bit of study, but there's no way I think that you can study tarot or start pulling tarot cards and then open a journal of any sort and not have different kinds of messages come through. I mean, it's just an adventure, and you never quite know what's going to happen when you open the journal, which is, I love that as well. So yeah, it's vital for me, I think, the journaling aspect, the journaling aspect of it. It's vital.
That's so cool too, because with the deck and study, I started, I'm not calling it a deck, I'm calling it tarot art, and I started making the digitally. So because I do a lot of my artwork digitally as well, and so I started collaging my version of each of the cards, the deck and cards, as we were going through. I'm a little behind right now, but
yeah, I'm too behind.
Yeah, but it was a great experience to be able to like take what we were learning in the deck and walk about the cards and viewing them through that astrological level, and then translating that into art helps solidify that in my brain, like, and in my understanding.
Yeah.
When I was learning Lenormand, in order to learn Lenormand, I made a Lenormand deck because that's how my brain works.
Yeah. It's that solidifying. Like, that's why I said, like, with memory, it just makes you hold on to it. Like I couldn't tell you what's on any of these pages in my notebooks where I've just used words. The minute it's come out into, say, something like this, I'm not going to forget that. I know what that means. I won't, I'm not going to forget that. So it solidifies it. And I think there are so many decisions that you have to make when you do art. Art's actually exhausting to make. Because you're constantly at the point of needing to make a decision, like every second, even up to the point of deciding when to stop. Even that's a decision. You don't just go, oh, I've stopped now. You have to decide to stop. So it's decision making all the way up to the end. And even when you've decided to stop, if you're the artist, you'll still look back and think, should I have done something different? Your brain's still going. And I think because your brain's so active and you're asking like questions all the time when you're making art, it just engages you so profoundly with what you're studying and learning to turn it into art, because you're in a question asking phase, like, is that color going to be right? And then you have to say, well, what color do I need? What am I trying to represent? And it just solidifies everything. Like this one, I mean, this page, it was interacting with real life as well, and like seed planting, and like the dogs destroying fences in the garden, and like my hedges being too high in the garden. But it just all tied in with the cards I was pulling and the decking that I was in. So it's a lovely, fun way to solidify, to help you remember what you're learning, and to like give yourself a space to explore what you're learning, I think. And I think collage is brilliant as well, because if you can't draw, although that phrase I want eradicated from the language. I
Everybody can
want that phrase to be gone. But so many people say, I'd love to be able to do what you did, but I can't draw. And I'm like, no, 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 everybody can draw. I mean, I used to teach 5-year-olds. I used to teach one in primary. And I would have 5-year-olds come into my class saying, I can't draw. I'd think, how can you be 5 and have already learnt that phrase, I can't draw? So anyway, that's a complete separate soapbox that I could go for hours on. But I think collage is brilliant if you've got that false narrative running in your head that you can't draw, because you can, like, it's just tearing and cutting and sticking, and it's a really freeing way to draw, to cut and stick in collage.
I find tearing paper, I do a lot of torn paper stuff because I find tearing paper really cathartic. Just like, and like just tearing things up. And I mean, when I do hand collage, I don't use scissors a lot. I do a lot of tearing stuff because I like the process of tearing, and I like that it comes out like imperfect. I have so much respect for your art because it's so organic, and I feel like every time I try to make like messy organic art, it ends up in my little black and white squared, perfectly little aligned arranged box every time.
Yeah.
It's like when I try to be messy, it doesn't like, I don't know, it doesn't really work for me, but
you like tearing more than scissors.
But I like tearing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, apparently that's my thing. I love the imperfectness of it, because no matter how hard I try with tearing the paper perfectly, it's never going to tear perfectly, which is why I enjoy it. It's like that freedom.
So a torn line is beautiful, like a torn edge.
That's the best.
There's nothing like a torn edge. If you try to like physically make a torn edge any other way than just tearing it, you'd spend forever trying to get that effect.
Yeah,
it's beautiful,
it's
a torn
so
edge.
beautiful.
I've got a friend who is she blames me for everything. She blames me for getting her into doll collecting, decks, and now art. She's started journaling, and she's incredibly tidy. She's incredibly precise. Like, you will never find a thing out of place in her house. Doesn't matter if you call in the middle of the night, you will never find anything out of place. And she was very, very meticulous, wanted everything just perfect. And then she discovered the torn edge, and it opened a whole new world to her. Now she comes around with books that she's made, and I go, who are you? And that was torn paper that got her into that. And she was going, look at this edge, isn't it beautiful? And I'm like, oh, I feel like a proud mama.
Yeah, there's just freedom in that. And it's also, for me, part of that, I think the torn paper thing is like, it's almost like an inner child thing. Remember when you were like little and you like tear pages out of books and do stuff with it? Like I was El Destructo with all of my books, because once I was done reading it, I would tear it all up and make stuff with it. For me, it's a little bit of tying back into I think that sort of inner child sense of just like getting crayons out and coloring and tearing paper and just being really freeform creative with it.
Yeah, and kids love the process of art. They're not as bothered with the outcome, which is what starts to form that sentence, I can't draw. Because we get fixated as adults on the outcome, or like the picture in our head. It's got to look like what we see in our head, whereas art doesn't work like that. It's nice to have like a vague idea of where you're going, but the art will take over. And it will take over, and you might think it's taken over because I can't do it, but I think it's more the art does take over. Every point in my art, even if I'm doing like a really long oil painting, there is a point where something takes over, and I'm not making decisions as much anymore. The art starts telling me what to do, where it's before it's me making decisions. There's always that point that comes in, and I think kids get to that point a lot easier because they're not as fixated on the outcome. I think enjoying the process with art is all of it. I mean, my Sheilas, you're saying about ripping paper, I've got some of the Sheilas that I've been doing this week, and I started working with wax crayons because I'd done loads of ink work for a couple of years. I've been doing really meticulous ink work. I mean, you want to talk about meticulous, like ink work and stippling just takes like weeks and
Forever,
weeks and
yeah.
weeks. And like that with paper cutting I was doing, which also takes weeks. And I just really needed a break. So when I wanted to start exploring the Sheilas, I started using wax crayons. And that's just so kid-like, wax crayons. They feel like, you know, kids' crayons. And at first I just thought, what am I doing? This is just so different to what I'm used to. I'd never worked with oil pastels before, ever. And oh my gosh, I love it now. I mean, this is, like you were talking about the ripped edge, this is torn papers just glued down and then just drawn on top with wax crayons. Or what I'll do, I'll like draw first, then add in the papers on top. So it'll be like sandwiching it up and then draw again over the top. So I love that. I love layering. I do a lot of layering in my art. So drawing, collage, drawing again, more collage, drawing again. And the wax crayons really took me back as well to being a kid. It's just lovely. I mean, there's Sandy Hester is an art channel that I watch on YouTube, and she does all sorts of things. Like she draws with a non-dominant hand, and she'll do like drawing with both hands at the same time. She'll do like blind drawing where like she shuts her eyes to draw, or she'll do drawing where she's not allowed to take the crayon off the paper ever. And all of that just links you back to your inner child, I think. Yeah, so I think anybody wanting to add art into their tarot journaling or to start exploring it away from the words and with images, because I mean you can do I do a combination of all these things. I think anybody listening that's got that idea of, well, I can't do art, I'm not an artist, I can't draw, I think all of these are brilliant techniques to get back into like the play of the process. It's not about the outcome, and like opening those doors for the messages to come through playing. They're just all little tools to play. And I think if you look at like people like Picasso or Modigliani or oh my gosh, all the greats, at some point they've gone through a really like childish phase where they're literally just drawing with a single line and it looks like 5 seconds on the paper, and you know, that's it, they're playing. So I think it's different now, I think, in school, but I think when I went through the art process of like art O levels and A levels, it was very much like you have to learn to draw like a photograph. Like we learn perspective, you learn how to draw the face. And if you couldn't make it look like a photograph, you weren't very good at art. It's so different now. Now I see the curriculum has opened up, like the kids draw with wire and they explore all sorts of different techniques. It's so much better. But I think that idea of if you can't make it look like a photograph, it's still in our heads. It's still like whispers, so it doesn't look like it. And but we've got cameras for photographs. So this is just a cheap scrapbook, but with the weavers, because I was only pulling like a weaver around every full moon, and then working with it with through the month, I was doing a lot of path working and meditating with the card, and it's just been really, really profound. But I wanted somewhere to record the story and the world that I was being put into and the message that the weaver wanted to give me. So I mean, you can see this first page, there's a printout of the card. There is literally torn paper, there's like literally cotton threads glued on there. I mean, PVA is fantastic because you can glue anything down, leave it overnight, and the PVA becomes like see-through. So so that's the ripping. And like the colors mean something, like giving, like the blue thread for me means something in my art. So it's almost turning art materials into into symbols for a specific meaning. I mean, that's another really good way to put down a message in art, is to give like a shape or a line or a colour or a material a meaning, like give it your own meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, this I used, it was like the heron's hut was in the meditation. So I cut out some pictures of herons and did my next bit of journaling on that. And then this card was amazing. It took me on a journey and put me onto what I used to call my treasure walk. Now, my treasure walk, I always think this treasure walk was my very first tarot deck. And I know that sounds odd, but when I was first a mom, so we're going back 17 years now, and Tilly was still like a tiny little baby. She wasn't sleeping because of her syndrome, was literally getting about 20 minutes a day, and that was it, sleep. So I was completely exhausted. But I wanted to go out on a walk every day. So I'd put her in the buggy and we would do the same 2-mile loop. And because I was so exhausted and she never slept, I had no time to do any art. So I thought, right, I'm going to turn my walk into an art walk, a treasure walk. And any rubbish I see on the walk, I used to have like carrier bags on the buggy, like handles. And I would pick up rubbish and put it in the handles. And here's some of the pictures of some of the things I found. And I did it for a year and a half. And after about 3 weeks, the things I was finding began to make connections, and they started to give me a story. And it was mind-blowing. And I always say this bag of rubbish, I had boxes of rubbish in the end that I photographed and pieced stories together. This was my first tarot deck. That idea of animism, you know, the energy of everything holds a story. And this work with the weavers took me back to that treasure walk. And one day on that treasure walk, somebody had sprayed on one of the walls that I walked past a bit of graffiti, and it was like the ghost of Molly Jackson haunts you was sprayed on a wall. And it just seemed like such a bizarre wording to put on a wall. Like even the word haunts as spray graffiti, it didn't look right. And I started to think that this was the story of Molly Jackson. It was going to tell me the story of Molly Jackson. It was fascinating, but this work with the weavers, it took me back to Molly Jackson. And so the work with the weavers, it brought in that sort of deep synchronicity and connection with something in real life that had been going on. And then I got really excited about what was happening, and every meditation then, to make sure I retained the understanding of what had happened in the meditation, I literally just did these doodle sketches. They're not grand pieces of art whatsoever, but for me they just hold whole essence of the meditation that I was doing. So you can see, like, they're really simple. A really nice thing to do with sort of doodle sketches like this is to also give it a title. Imagine you were hanging it on a gallery wall and give it a title. So this one is Soul Tired, and this one is called A Woman Full of Sea Glass. So that encompasses like quite a rich tarot practice just with one deck. And like meditating with it, and like just doodle sketches to retain the story of what they said. I mean, you can see sometimes the journaling comes in as well, but you know, you don't have, that is literally scribble drawing. So it doesn't have to be like fine art every time, do you know?
Yeah, because it still has all the same meaning.
Absolutely. And I mean, I do love the end product. I mean, I spent ages. This is my grimoire. I designed the front cover, and that's like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's old jewelry and old jigsaw puzzles that I've like used, and you know, you can see it's jewelry pieces.
Do I
and
see Frida under there?
Yeah, absolutely. Frida in the middle.
Yeah.
So this is an altered book as well. This is a grimoire. You know, and I did spend ages on the cover of this, and I do love that. And like some of the pages, this was exploring circle magic, which I know you've seen the video. I've got a video on my
That was one of my
on my
favorite videos. I watched it multiple times.
oh, bless you. I mean, and this is, there is a lot of work in this. This isn't a scribble, but it's not me coming up with the ideas for this page. The book itself gave me the ideas. And you know, there's paper cutting and there's line work. So, you know, I love both extremes. I love the doodle sketches. I love the you know, I love the stuff that takes a long time too. But like you say, it just depends on, you know, where you're at.
Do you have any advice you would give for someone who's, I think we've touched upon a few things about advice for how people could maybe start to incorporate art into their tarot journaling. And we talked about like paper collaging and coloring and just doodle work. Is there anything else, like if anybody's like sitting there, I don't know if you get this, but I get this a lot where people will watch a video of mine and they'll be like, oh, I could never do that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people message me saying, I wish I could do it, but I can't draw. And they're always bombarded there with 1,000 messages from me, because it's my it's the thing that I most think no when I hear, because I want everybody to know that they can create. And I think anybody wanting to start incorporating anything like arty into their journals is just to try and detach from outcome, just to really enjoy the process. When I did do a video recently where I said, you know, a lot of people say I don't know what to do, how to start, and I think I showed in my grimoire, like, don't think about what to add, think about what to take away. Like, actually get, like, this is just a book from a secondhand shop. Like, think about taking stuff away. Like, I know a few people who've watched that video have messaged me saying that they took my advice and they went and bought this. This is your friend if you get stuck on what to add. Just get a pot of gesso. I mean, it's cheap. This is £5. Look, white acrylic gesso. It's literally just looks like white paint. And it's just what you just paint over stuff that you don't want in a book that's already got stuff, and let the book tell you what to leave on the page, and then start from there. So you're not starting from scratch. So that's a nice tip. Don't add, take away to start with. And collect stuff as well. I think it's really hard. It's like if you wanted to cook something, you wanted to cook a fancy meal and you'd got no food in the house, you'd really struggle. It's like people who want to like build fences and they've got no power tools, you're gonna struggle. And so collect things, and it doesn't need to be like expensive art stuff. Like I get envelopes. I love envelope paper, and I just have a box and I just put it in. In fact, I've just done a big declutter because it got ridiculous. I've got stuff everywhere, and I thought, you know, you could do art now for the next 10 years and not use all of this, and you can't move. So it's really easy to get free stuff. Like the journals are from Amazon envelopes. So start looking around at what you've already got, and or stuff that's coming in, like packaging materials that you could wash and start collecting materials. Okay, so I've got a basket of other things as well, because like you need stuff. If you want to start doing this, there needs to be some sort of investment so you can collect free things or junk things. I think having no cash for the art shop, it's magic in its own way, but gesso I would go and buy. I mean, look, this was £2.49. This is PVA. Could not do what I do without endless amounts of PVA, you know, to grab. If you're going to do any sort of cutting, like paper cutting, which is a really lovely way, like to draw with cutting, I call it drawing with the void. It's really good. X-Acto knives are brilliant for that. If you're going to do any sort of pen work, I will save everybody buying endless pens trying to find one that really will stay when you put watercolour over the top of it. And it's this one, the Stedler pigment liner pens are just fantastic. If you
Oh.
think you're going to use any sort of writing where you're going to put a wash over it, watercolor
Mhm.
wash or something, they're the ones to go for. I mean, changing the color of the paper, like getting some cheap black card, that feels magic straight away.
Mhm.
And then you can get like these sort of gel pens, these white gel pens, having a pack of those. You can get the jelly rollers, but you can also just get these are cheap ones from B&M here in the UK. And I also love, if you've watched my channel for half a second, you will see a complete selection of different napkins
Napkins,
or
yeah.
like tissue papers coming out, because I said about that layering. If you want to layer meaning, like our tarot readings are layered, aren't they? That like the cards will layer meaning on top of meaning. Napkins are fantastic for finding like a visual that will hold that meaning. And then if you split it down to just the picture layer, they're normally about 3 ply, and you separate it. It takes ages to separate, so I won't do it now. But and then just PVA one layer on, you'll still be able to see your work underneath. And I do that a lot. I mean, I've done it I do it a lot in the Sheilas. I mean, you can see these are different napkins, but you can still see the drawing underneath. And like fabrics as well will do that, like old lace and stuff. I love that sort of thing. So those are just some basic materials that are good to have in the house, because I mean you can't bake a cake without eggs and milk and flour.
Yeah.
Is milk in a cake? Oh my gosh, you can tell I'm not a cook. You can tell I'm an artist and not a cook.
I'm not a cook either.
Do you put milk in a cake?
I think it depends on the cake, but I'm not a cook either.
Just don't ever say I can't draw, I can't create, and just look for the story everywhere.
Candy, thank you so much for stopping by to chat with me about tarot and art journaling.
Thank you so much, Dawn Michelle. It's just a complete honour to be on here.
And thank you all watching for hanging out with us for the first episode of Cards and Company. Also, don't forget to pop over to Candy's channel and check out her wonderfully creative content and subscribe so you can follow along with her journey.